So we like to define the cloud as really any technology system that is accessed primarily via the internet, is usually hosted by a third party, and is available 24/7, 365. Now that's a really simplified definition, because we can get really technical and everyone's sitting here thinking, well, what exactly are you talking about? So that's how we think about it. Now let me ask you a quick question. Based on those two commercials, was there anyone in the room that wasn't quite sure what exactly is the cloud, that maybe felt they got some understanding from those commercials? No takers? No takers? All right, no problem. What exactly lives in the cloud, I guess, is a better question. Does anyone have any idea what's in the cloud? Information. Okay, wonderful. Correct. Information and also applications are what are housed and stored in the cloud. So when you think of information in your business, you think of my proposals, my Excel spreadsheets, my PowerPoint documents. And when you think of your applications, you think of your accounting software or your productivity software or your line of business application that is specific to your industry, like Basil mentioned earlier. That's what you think of when you think of applications. And that's what's exactly in the cloud. And so in terms of the cloud, there are really two flavors that I want to talk to you guys about. The first one, which we've mentioned throughout the day, but I wanted to get into some more detail on, is considered software as a service. So normally, what you do when you're buying software, or at least the old model has always been that you purchase the product from the vendor, they send it to you on CD, or you download it directly, you install the software, and then after some time, after using the software, you have to buy an upgrade, or you pay some type of ongoing maintenance fee in order to get the latest updates. Well, software as a service is a slightly different model. That model, applications are hosted online by a vendor and pretty much made available to you and your business and your employees across the internet. As the name implies, it's paid for as a service, monthly, annually, usually priced by the number of users that you have, usually priced, in some cases, by the number of licenses that you need to have access to. So a few quick examples of software as a service. I think Miko mentioned both of these earlier. Team-based document storage services, such as Dropbox, which Chris mentioned, or Box, which is box.net. These tools allow you to pretty much store information in the cloud, so somewhere in the ether, on the internet, on a third party's server. And then you can then sync that information between the cloud and your individual computer. So that's team-based data storage, and also share that with the team. And then you have customer relationship management software, like Salesforce, that Miko mentioned, in order for you to manage your contacts and your prospects and your leads and manage your activities, like when do I follow up with this person? When did this person say they get back to me and I need to know? So these are some of the applications that are available in terms of software as a service. You also have other hosted applications like your accounting software. For many of you who may use QuickBooks in your business, that's now also available online. So one of the challenges that we see quite often in our own consultancy is that folks will have a QuickBooks stored on their computer. It's a local file. There's no backup for whatever reason. And can you imagine losing 10 years, 12 years of financial information about your business? QuickBooks Online resolves that issue by having that information in the cloud. And so you can work on your accounting. You can update, send invoices, do whatever. Steve's nodding his head. Tell me. Steve's an accountant, and he's nodding his head. What are you thinking?
QuickBooks Online is great.
Mm-hmm.
Some services, it's limited. It's not the same as
Right.
the desktop. They're not, one-to-one compatible.
Say that?
I'm sorry. No, I was just saying that online is great. It has its advantages, obviously, the main feature being you're able to access it from anywhere. Mm-hmm. But it's not the same as desktop. It doesn't have all the features of desktop. It works differently from desktop in many aspects. Mm-hmm. That doesn't make it bad. It just makes it different. Right. But also the point that you were making as far as the backup of QuickBooks, there are services that provide that for the desktop. Right. So does that automatic backup of your desktop software.
Okay.
You know, we use that at our firm to maintain our files for our clients as well. So there are those services that, you know, alleviate that issue that you're mentioning.
Okay, correct. So as Steve mentioned, and you have another point? I'll grab it. Here we go. Got me running up and down today. Hello.
I just have to speak in defense of QuickBooks Online. And I use both versions of QuickBooks for different things. I work on some nonprofit boards and I'm the treasurer for them, and we don't use online for them. So I do know that there are features that QuickBooks Desktop has that the online version does not have. But I cannot tell you, I can run payroll from anywhere in the world. I can print checks from anywhere. I can send invoices. I love the fact that if I'm not sure what just happened, I can hit back and go back to my last screen. Anybody who uses QuickBooks or uses any accounting software, you know how invaluable that is. And I can't do that with my desktop version of QuickBooks. I'm like, oops, what just happened? I have to actually figure it out and go look at the audit trail and see what just happened. So I love it, and using QuickBooks Online makes me more open and receptive to embracing some of these other technology options. I just want to say that.
Thank you very much, Tracy. I do appreciate your input. I think what you just heard was a very important conversation about cloud-based software, okay? Which is that it is limited typically when you have, let's say, a software vendor that's now just moving into the cloud. So there are applications out there that were built on the cloud and have grown in the cloud. QuickBooks is an example of a software application that originally was used primarily on your desktop and has now started evolving into options where you can use QuickBooks Online. So what tends to happen with a lot of software as a service applications that were born on desktops and are growing into the cloud is that they don't quite always have the same functionality that are available in the desktop-based versions of those products. So that's one thing that you may want to consider before you select any particular solution. Really what we're trying to do here today in terms of discussing software as a service is really showing you some of the options that are out there, sort of opening up your minds as to maybe what some of the possibilities could be for your business. I think one other, I think I mentioned accounting, same images. Project management, Miko mentioned that as well. There definitely are really intuitive project management applications available online. The ones that we recommend are Basecamp, which is probably one of the most used online project management and collaboration tools. But then there are also more traditional project management tools available online as well, where you have your Gantt chart and your everything, where you can figure how your project is doing. So just wanted to mention that. So in terms of the benefits of software as a service, just like we talked about earlier, many of these things are very affordable for your business. And typically what you would have done in the past is you pay an upfront amount of money to get a piece of software. Whereas a software as a service, they give you a really low entry point, usually $5, $6, $7, $10. It just really depends on who the vendor is. A really low entry point that you pay for as a service, usually priced per user or per month. And one of the advantages there is that, like I mentioned earlier, you get your upgrades and your enhancements right away. So instead of waiting to download the new version and install it or have them send you the CD or any of that, the software is available online, and whenever the vendor makes a change to that software, releases a new feature, it's then just rolled out to all of its users. So that's one of the great advantages. You're staying ahead of the curve as far as technology goes. It's hosted. No software to install, no server, no computers to worry about. Is the data on this computer versus that computer? And as I mentioned, new features become immediately available. Another thing is that it's scalable. So as you grow, it grows, or rather, as you grow, you can grow with it. So if you need to add a new user that's just joined your company, boom, that person has access to that software that you need them to have access to right away. The other flavor of the cloud is what is considered infrastructure as a service. And that can, let me put the definition up and then I'll make it really simple. So it says infrastructure as a service is a provision model. Organizations outsource the equipment used to support operations, and then the things that you're outsourcing are storage, hardware, servers, networking components. All right, That's a really big definition, but the bottom line is you're paying to use someone else's hardware. So instead of you buying a server to put in your office or buying a bunch of servers to put in your office along with storage to make sure that everything's backed up and saved and all that stuff, then there are providers, what we call cloud service providers, who give you this infrastructure. So they have it in their facilities, which are usually these really big, massive data centers with rows and rows and rows of servers and storage equipment dedicated to those companies so that they can then, in turn, give you your own logical chunk. That way, the same Microsoft Windows server you may have at your office that might run your application, like your line of business application, like Basil mentioned, or might host your QuickBooks, that same operating system, that same software is made available to you through infrastructure as a service. So when should you consider infrastructure as a service? This may not apply necessarily to all businesses, but it does apply to some businesses that have specific needs. So you have a platform-specific application. Let's say that there are no software as a service equivalents out there for you. So then there's no version of your specific enterprise document management software, correct? That's what you do? Yeah, so let's say there's no specific document management solution that is available that you like or that your company is accustomed to using as software as a service, then you may want to keep that same application running on a specific server operating system or something like that in the cloud. So that's one good reason for you to consider infrastructure as a service. Another one is you need to scale resources on demand. And when I say resources, I mean computing resources. So for instance, the traditional model of computing is that you buy a server or you buy equipment that is going to be powerful enough and has enough resources to manage the busiest day of its life. So in the case of a retailer, for instance, like traditionally Macy's and any sort of department store that you go to would have paid a lot of upfront money in order to acquire hardware that is going to be busy only during the holiday season. So it's a lot of underutilized capacity. And so one of the advantages for any company that needs to move up and down in terms of resources, you have tremendous growth, or you may have a situation where your volume increases quickly for whatever reason. And normally you'd be stuck having to upgrade your server that sits in your office and waiting to order parts and do all that stuff. With this, you can just simply scale up, almost at a click of a button. And so you can scale up, and when things slow down, you can scale down, and you pay only for what you're actually using. The third reason is high availability. Now, many people could get by with having a server in their office, and in many cases it makes sense. But let's say your operation simply can never be down. You know, if your server's down for 1 hour, you lose tens of thousands of dollars. Then you need high availability, and that means redundancy. That means having a backup of almost every system in your business. So instead of investing the money to have a backup internet connection or a backup server or a backup storage device, then infrastructure as a service allows you to have that same redundancy available to you in the cloud because you need that high availability. The infrastructure is provided to you. It has the high availability built in. You don't have to worry about it. Okay? So those are the three scenarios. Some of the benefits, as I mentioned, pay-per-use. Sometimes you may get a server, what we call a server instance, or one version of a server running for a certain number of hours, and you pay for how long it runs for, how much data is transferred to and from that. Another part of it is that infrastructure is maintained for you. So you don't have to worry about upgrading hard drives or adding memory or any of that stuff to the servers that you have. The cloud service provider that you contract with does that for you. And then finally, as I mentioned, it's logically dedicated to you. So those are some of the reasons that you may want to consider, or those are ways you could benefit from infrastructure as a service. So sort of in conjunction with that, I wanted to touch on this topic, and I think Marlon's smiling. Are you? Yeah, he's smiling already. Going virtual. And that was one of the topics that was on the marketing for this event that's on your agenda, and I want to make sure I touch on that. So what is going virtual? What I consider to be a virtual company is really any company that is capable of operating without a central or physical office space, right? Notice I said capable. Doesn't mean that they do, but capable, which is to say that if you didn't have your office tomorrow, would your business still operate normally without it, all right? I think that's really the consideration that you have to make when you say virtual company. So let's talk about that. Some of the three main things that I say are needed for your company to be virtual. Your business must depend on information and knowledge workers. So consulting agencies, service businesses like accountants or lawyers, those are really good areas that you can consider being virtual. You must be able to have most of the data coming into your business and leaving your business capable of being stored in a digital format. So if you typically get a lot of paperwork, you want to make sure you digitize that. If you typically receive a lot of information or if you need to send information out from your company, can you send it out in digital form to the people that it needs to get to? That's also a major consideration. And then, like I said, it must be capable of operating without that physical office space. So those are my three main criteria. And there's my definition. So one solution for that, obviously, is having that information, that data that's very critical and important to your business in the cloud. Why go virtual? You want to take that question now, Marlon? Why go virtual? It provides you the freedom to work anywhere. So if you don't have a physical office space, or if you're a small shop and you don't need to have a specific location to work from, it really frees you of having that responsibility. You can work from anywhere. So if it's the Starbucks down the street, or if it's the beach chair in Jamaica or Antigua, where I'm from. We have nice beaches too, Marlon, just so you know. Okay. 365. Are you from Antigua? Okay, wonderful. Can greatly reduce your operating expenses. That's the other advantage. So particularly now in these times where companies are really being tasked with doing more with less and less resources to do it with, you really have to look at, how valuable is it for me to have a large office lease or have office expenses, overhead associated with my business. And if you can find a way to cut out some of those areas where you're spending money, then you can be a more effective company. But it does require transformation in the way that your organization functions and thinks. And it really does change the business model for growth. So let's think of your typical attorney's office or your accounting office. If you're an accountant and your business takes off, you're making all the money, and you have to bring on some additional folks, the typical model has been, well, I need to get more office space, all right? And then I need to get more office space to store the files that all my new clients are sending me as well. And so scaling is not as easy in that model, because not only do you have to wait for your lease to expire before you can maybe look at new office space, you might have to renegotiate your existing space, and all that takes time. So that actual transition may slow down your growth, having to worry about the physical limitations of your space. Whereas if you're a virtual company, your data, your applications, the information that you send and receive from clients is in the cloud or stored digitally, then you can grow. You can just grow. You just add folks, plug them into the system, boom, 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 new person on board. And it also changes the amount of opportunities that your firm can access. Because if all your information, like Miko said, she had to build a platform. She had to build an infrastructure for people that she wanted to partner with, so that they felt that they could just plug into it right away. And so that allowed her access to people that maybe weren't in Atlanta or weren't in the United States or wherever, because now you're able to partner with someone. They can get access to the information that you need to work on and share together, and they can be anywhere in the world. So it really does provide that opportunity in making it easier for your business to grow or expand. So I just wanted to touch on a few more technologies that can help in that process. And some of these may be attractive even if you're not considering being a virtual company, but you want to have some advantages of maybe perhaps reducing your operating expenses or even improving your workflow as well. And so the first thing I want to touch on is a hosted or virtual phone system. And I'm not sure how many people are familiar with this. Is anyone in the room familiar with a hosted or virtual phone system? Any idea what that might be? Jenna, do you want to take it?
Well, there's a bunch of different components that really give you advantages by having your phone system managed online. But one of the ones that I prefer the most is if I'm out of the office, for example, and a client or a reporter calls and they leave a message, I instantly get an email on my phone notifying me that I've gotten a voicemail. So I might be on the go, but I can still contact everything that's happening on my office. Okay. You know, they can link my cell phone to a conference call without adding an additional line. I mean, there's a lot of benefits.
Okay, wonderful. So as Jenna mentioned, and thank you very much for that, Jenna. Oh, there's another volunteer, wonderful. Right behind you.
My name is Caitlin, and we're with ServCorp, and we actually provide phone services for our clients. So we're an international company. We transfer phones all over the world, cell phones, home phones, and things like that. We also provide reception in Spanish and English. Right. So it's huge, huge possibilities with this, and it's a great way to save money. You know, why pay a receptionist salary every month when you can literally have these options, you know, for $100 or less? Right, agreed.
Kelly?
That's funny, you touched on that. I want to make a comment. I hired a person about 3 months ago, and they live in another city. So they work in another city, but yet, you know, we have dialogue on a daily basis. But when you work virtual, you don't have to seclude yourself to one particular area. I don't have to, you know, say, oh, you have to work, you have to reside in Miami, Fort Lauderdale. You could live in Orlando, you could live in New York City, you know. So that's the great thing about, you know, virtual. I'm wondering if that's going to be the new thing, you know, in the next few years.
Well, I mean, I think the whole idea of being virtual has been teeming beneath the surface for a long time, because you know companies have traditionally tried to provide better work-life balance for their employees, and so they've had telecommuting programs and had set up infrastructure whereby their employees could work from home. But with the economy the way it is right now, everyone is trying to find ways to be smarter about the way they're spending money in their business, and it's also becoming more culturally acceptable for individuals to work from home or work from sort of any location. I mean, how many entrepreneurs, how many businesses, how many ideas have blossomed in the local Starbucks, right? And so it's becoming a lot more acceptable, culturally acceptable, for people to work from home. And I think that those two things are really driving that trend as well. Okay. So just to kind of finish up, oh, I went backwards. Okay, here we go. Electronic fax, Miko mentioned it. I think perfect way to save money on that extra fax line that you have. Just make electronic fax. And now there are solutions whereby you can have an actual fax machine in your office, but it still sends the fax across the internet, right? So it makes it easier. You don't have to scan and then send it. You can just simply send directly from the machine in your office, and then it goes out across the internet. Those are fax box solutions, or something similar to that. Question, Emilio? Oh, yes.
You got a 305 number, you're somewhere in Dubai or wherever you're traveling, and now you're sitting there with a 305 caller ID, and any calls you make within your 305 is a free call. So it allows you to take your desktop anywhere in the world as long as you have internet access, and nobody on the other end knows whether you are, in fact, under a palm tree or working in Dubai. Correct.
So I don't know if anyone caught the last part of that, but I want to move a little quickly through this now. I think we're coming up on lunchtime. But short story there was that hosted phone systems, virtual phone systems really kind of allow you to be anywhere. And you know, you can actually use if you don't have a phone, you can use your laptop. In many cases, you can use your actual iPhone or smartphone device dial over 3G, which can be a varying experience. And then also you could be on your iPad or another tablet PC and still be able to receive calls as if you were sitting in the office. Cloud services, everything we've talked about and touched on so far, is very important. That will help you go virtual. And then finally, mobile connectivity, which is something that Kyle is going to come forward and address right now.